spiritual awakening to inspire your personal enlightened journey. I'm your host, Megan Mary, international best-selling metaphysical author and founder of Inner Realms Publishing. Let's bring in the light. Welcome. Today we have Georgia Jean. In 2004, Georgia had a knock you on the floor spiritual event where she connected with the Circle of Light, a non-physical collective supporting humanity through the evolutionary shift. Since then, through thousands of transmissions, they have shared one of the most comprehensive overviews of how the matrix of reality is created. And most importantly, how we can generate radical shifts to assist both personal and collective upliftment. Georgia and the benevolent, wise teachings of the Circle of Light have been featured on Gaia TV's Interview with E.D, Extra Dimensionals, and is regularly featured on Spread Your Third Eye podcast. Welcome, Georgia.
Thank you very much. Hi.
It's lovely to have you here today, and I can't wait to dive in.
Indeed.
So, the first question I ask everyone is, what does enlightenment mean to you?
Well, good question. So it's funny because something that I started channeling pretty early is my guides would say, humanity needs to enlighten up and have a little bit more of a, sense of humor about the reality that we're in, because we are in this sort of creative theater of life. And of course, there are many serious things that happen in the world, but when we can kind of step back and witness it a little bit more as a creative exercise, we can lighten up about it and actually through that process kind of raise the frequency of the whole experience. So I think, there's a lot to that word enlightenment, isn't it? Because it's also really about bringing light to things, becoming conscious of that which we're unconscious of. And what we're unconscious of can be both our wounds and our pain, but also our greatest creativity and our greatest potential as well, everything that's been kept at bay by the mind. So it's a lot of things. A moment of enlightenment really is also, I think, being in a place of the no mind, where the mind is no longer interfering with our perception of life and existence itself.
Yes, all of that. That's a lot. And as a celebrated stand-up comic and a renowned trance channel, you are probably the first to take the enlightenment into the lighten up type
Yeah,
metaphor and be lighter in a more fun way,
yeah,
versus all of the, like you said, seriousness
yes.
that
The
many
heaviness of
times
the
the
yes, of the
heaviness.
human rumination and overanalysis, and that really keeps us in our minds, and our minds are the source of most of the suffering on the planet, to be perfectly
Absolutely.
honest. Yeah.
Yes, it's all an illusion of separation, and I know you talk
Yeah.
about that as well, and that's yes, for sure. So I usually give people an opportunity to talk about what brought them to do the work that they're doing. And for you,
Mm.
it was a knock you on the floor spiritual event. So of course,
Yeah.
everyone wants to hear. So
What
please
that was.
share that experience with us
Yeah.
first.
Sure. Well, to make it a longer story as short as I can, I was doing stand-up comedy professionally in Los Angeles. And for a funny profession, it was actually a very heavy and intense and competitive, and actually where I was performing a very toxic scene. And I had been listening to Abraham Hicks, and a friend of mine and we'd kind of been introduced to that material, like law of attraction. I was working a lot on myself to kind of psychologically handle the stuff that I was going through in the comedy world, not from so much from the performing, but from the actual environment itself. And all of that was kind of leading to something that I had no idea was around the corner. And I'd always been interested in like spiritual stuff, basically. I learned how to read palms when I was 15 and tarot cards, and I started transcendental meditation when I was 19. So I sort of was always on the path a little bit. But this period at the time in LA when I was really kind of going for it and really working through a lot of stuff was probably the most intensive personal development period that I had had. And my friend, she had made this connection with these energies through this thing called a pathfinder, which she had sort of intuitively been drawn to. It was like a shamanistic talking board, like kind of like a Ouija board, but it was all in the light. And she could sit there by herself, and the disc would just spin around all this kind of dictation from the spirits. And it was kind of continuing on what we had learned about law of attraction. And of course, we were always just asking about when we were going to find a boyfriend, basically. But it was all like really kind of eventually the energy started saying, listen, we can give you a lot more information if you let us speak through you. And because we were already familiar with it, with like the concept of channeling from Abraham Hicks, and I was also reading Seth at the time, very famous series of books in the 60s, I think it was. So we were already opening up with access, kind of exposure to that vibration and that kind of frequency work. And I was sort of saying to my friend, I was thinking she was going to start channeling. I was like, do it, like, let the energies in. Come on, like, do it, do it, do it. And we sat down one day and would always sit and write this dictation that was coming out of the board. And it started spelling out, oh, there's tons of energy here today. You're going to feel a little bit weird. You'll make some strange noises. And then just kind of out of the blue, the energy actually blasted into me. I went into this kind of like instant trance and I just sort of went, oh my God, I think it's happening to me. Kind of my head dropped down and then this huge rush of energy came in and the guides started speaking through me and they were just like, we're here and we're here to help the planet and you're going to help us. And that whole weekend was just really crazy. Like they were working on us energetically. There was so much energy in the room for this kind of like blast through event. We would walk out of the room and like we were actually kind of like smoking cigarettes on the balcony because we were like, what the hell is going on in there?
It's heavy.
I would walk back into the room and there was so much energy. I literally was like knocked to the floor and
Hmm.
they were just working with our energetic systems. It sounds super wild. It's still a very wild, like probably one of the wildest things I've ever experienced. But that's kind of how it started. And I didn't realize I could do it by myself. She was living in Encinitas, just outside of LA. So it wasn't until I was back in LA by myself and realized that I could kind of do this myself. And we went through a long testing period to kind of figure out if it was really even a thing that was happening and not just something I was making up. And yeah, and just that was over 21 years ago. So I've been working with the energies ever since. And of course it's refined a lot and tons of information has come through as they promised.
Amazing.
Yeah.
That's got to be so confusing, like you said at the
Yeah.
beginning. And
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, because I had actually, a week before it happened, I had actually made the decision to leave the Comedy Store, which was the club that I was performing at, that was super toxic, and I was being like harassed, and I really didn't want to leave. I didn't want these kind of mean guys to win. But I did learn something about what I call the good ego, because my good ego was trying to fight and stay in the game, and it was just getting worse and worse and worse. And I just kind of learned that by surrendering and leaving, something greater actually was waiting to happen for me. And yeah, and so that was a precursor. And that place was very haunted. So I think I just actually couldn't open up while I was performing there and spending a lot of time there because it was like full of a lot of kind of crazy energy. Yeah.
yes, and as a novice, you run the risk of when you're just inviting anything in,
Right.
potentially having something that maybe isn't in your best interest become, the connection too. I think that that's always the risk at the beginning when you're not sure what you're dealing with.
What you're dealing with. Yeah, and I think, that's all sort of based on vibrational match.
Hmm.
Anyway, honestly, as I've continued to work with the circle, they've also really broken down that idea more as well and basically said everything is energy and everything is you. So when you start moving into this sort of realm where you're working from a concept that we call the all consciousness, so where you're working from the biggest energy, you start to see that even those negative entities or energy is actually
Are
part of all
parts of you.
consciousness, and you
Mm.
can work with purifying that energy and actually expand from it. So I think at
Mm.
different stages in the journey, there's ideas of like, say, protection and stuff like that, that actually start to drain you after a while and keep you in the polarity of good and bad. So there are moments where you start to work through that polarity paradigm of good and bad in the multidimensional, and start to
Hmm.
work through the heart center that does not have the polarities of good and bad.
Right.
And then you kind of transcend that paradigm and start to work from the all consciousness.
Hmm.
Mm.
And so did you end up leaving comedy altogether? Or
Yeah, I mean, a few things happened. Even after I had that event, I was still performing for quite a while. So it was kind of like really crazy because this huge event came in, and at first it was like the energies were identifying themselves as like Archangel Michael and a sort of a group of energies, whereas now we just kind of talk about it at like it's intelligence that we're pulling in from wherever the questions are going to. But it was kind of a trip because I was still like a broke stand-up comedian and I was getting all this information about law of attraction, but I was like catering and working at like celebrities' weddings. And like in the morning, I'd be like channeling this like archangel energy, and at night, I'd be picking up squashed grapes and trash off the floor at like celebrities' houses and
ah,
stuff like that, and just kind of working through a lot of my own personal resistance. I mean, you think the work that you've done to lead you to that event is like you've done a bunch of work, but really once you connect with that high frequency energy, the work has just begun. And part of that is there's so much of your mind kicking up now and in confusion, state of resistance. You have to really work through all of that and work through a lot of the denser energies within yourself, like fear and that's kind of a constant process, working through, the denser aspects of the egoic self so you can be as clear a channel as possible to allow the energies to flow through. But yeah, it was a wild time for sure.
it sounds like it, yes. Now, there were some teachings that they shared with you, I'm sure a number of,
Mm.
but tell us about some of them. What is seed point memory clearing?
Oh, okay. So yeah. So we have developed over the 21 years a lot of different healing techniques or energy re-architecture techniques, let's put it that way, and have attracted a lot of people who either have chronic issues or they're trying to do something really big on the planet, like they're trying to start up a big organization or they're an artist trying to reach a lot of people. So in all of these cases, there is what we call a high degree of resistance. So chronic conditions often have a lot of resistance. And so the techniques that we use process a lot of energy at once. So seed point memory clearing, for example, say somebody does have a chronic illness or there's some kind of theme that really permeates their life. Let's just say it's like desperation or pain or suffering. So in a seed point memory clearing, what we're doing is we're actually activating all the memories of impact that resonate around that frequency from all their lifetime experiences. So so instead of just dealing with a single past life or something like that, we find that theme, we're activating all them. And seed point memories, they're moments that have an impact. So they usually contain within that impact, we develop belief structures. So say it might be like, I'm not worthy, or God hates me, or something like that. There's usually a lot of emotional energy around those moments of impact, which may or not be fully processed. So say it is suffering, there might be a lot of grief that may not have been fully digested or processed. So it remains in the energetic field or vibrational system somebody has. And then we have control mechanisms, which is the mechanism we come up to control or keep that emotion and keep those beliefs unconscious. Like if it's too painful to deal with or the grief, it gets kind of frozen. So when we do a seed point memory clearing, we're activating that throughout all lifetime experiences. We're activating all the belief structures that are born, conscious and unconscious, all the emotional energy that may be locked down and frozen, and the control mechanism that's keeping that a frozen zeitgeist that's attracting at that certain frequency. And then we kind of dissolve all of that one. So it moves a lot of energy in one session, a lot of thematic energy. So that's, yeah, that's one of the techniques that we have developed that can really shift someone's paradigm very quickly if they clear out, that kind of, it's almost like a Christmas tree, but all the light bulbs are like suffering. We can just like a Christmas tree throughout your like energetic system from those different memory points. If we can just turn off that whole set of lights, then people's lives will step into a new paradigm.
It's a very interesting technique, and it sounds similar to me of the work that I really do with dream work in terms of
Mm.
the stories and the thematic
Yeah,
stories of their dreams, and that those are representations
yeah,
of these buried stories and
yes,
experiences
unconscious
that
significance.
are really playing out
Yeah,
in their daily life
yeah,
and that are impacting them in an energetic way, that
yeah,
their
absolutely,
energy
absolutely,
is being held as a result of that.
totally.
And it really does, in a similar way, I think, move that energy out when you can draw it from the subconscious into the
That's right.
conscious.
Totally, totally. And dreams are definitely a great gateway that our consciousness may be trying to draw our attention to something. I actually had like a super powerful dream like that the other night, actually. And I use dreams. So the teachings of the circle is basically everything is you. So we do a lot of projection work. We do a lot of work with love and acceptance. So if say there's somebody in your external world that that you're having an issue with, really they're an aspect of you that's unconscious to you. And we would do the love and acceptance on it. So I love and accept the part of me that is that person. It's a way to unify the field, the oneness of ourselves to come back into the all consciousness. And the same with dreams, like everything in a dream is an aspect of ourself. And so if I have a really powerful dream, I'll use those same techniques where I'll go, okay, like I love and accept the part of me that was that, drove the car off the cliff or whatever has happened in the dream, basically. If it's obviously one of those psychological processing dreams, I'll use the same techniques that we use. Yeah,
Absolutely. It's such a profound way to understand more about ourselves
totally.
and to give ourselves an opportunity to renew, really, through that
Yeah.
remembering.
Yes, absolutely. Unify, reconnect.
Yes, unify the light with the dark also.
Yes, yes. Because the shadow is, as we know, it can be as we said, the negative stuff, but it also can be our greatest potential and our gifts that are actually just trying to come in and embody. It's all there in that dream landscape.
hmm And when you talk about embodying,
Mm,
in your experience with the trance states,
mm,
what is that experience like in terms of, for you, receiving that wisdom? And what are some
mm.
of the significant teachings that you feel they have shared with you or passed through you, as it were?
Yeah. Well, the most important thing that they're really emphasizing right now is the importance of heart centering as a way to get out of the mind. So all of our unsupportive conditioning and programming is imprinted in the mind. And when we move the focus of our energy out of the mind and into the heart, and I'm not talking about the mind as a tool for getting things done. I'm talking about the psychological mind, the mind where the suffering is. They're like, I don't know if I should or shouldn't do that, or if I can or can't do it, that kind of stuff. That's the psychological mind. When we come into the heart center, a couple of things happen. The heart is always going to show us very directly the aspects of ourselves that we do need to work with and integrate in order to come back into union. And it's not going to distract us with extra personal development work, spiritual work that may actually not be moving us forward into a state of wholeness and integration. And also, as we are evolving individually and as a human collective, it's important to understand that what we are experiencing now is the reality that we know how to create with the programming of our conscious and unconscious mind. And if we really want to move into a greater, different, or evolved reality, we need to actually go through this process of surrender. And that opens up a gateway where new consciousness can actually come in, become embodied within us, and then shift the material reality that we're generating and creating from that place. So heart centering it's always been part of the work, but it's been really important in, well, probably about the last 5 or 6 years, they've really been emphasizing it, because you can see humanity is trying to evolve right now, but most of humanity is still really operating from the mind, which is amplifying those illusions of polarity, separation, survival. Everything's kind of getting worse because we're trying to change things from our mind, and our mind only really knows what it knows how to create. So we do need to go through a stage of surrender to our heart, surrender to something greater, to bring in the new intelligence that will actually enlighten us up and elevate us into a level of existence that we have not yet experienced yet.
Yeah, and that's really the Great Awakening, is
Yeah,
that transition from that old way of thinking, like you said, the old consciousness,
yes,
to that new heart-centered consciousness where
yes.
there's some confusion about heart-centered, and I think
I think
people
so. There is too, yes.
don't quite get what we mean by that.
Yes.
And it's actually, like you said, just I like the phrase the no mind.
Yeah, and just
It's
really focusing in the middle
yeah.
of the chest, training yourself
Hmm.
to
Yes.
get out of the buzzy up here and just
Yes.
focus your energy in your heart center. Unless you're actively using your mind to do something, the more we can actually spend time running energy through our heart center. And manifestation is non-linear when you run energy through the heart, which is what allows for like the miracles and what appears to be miracles to happen, that these revered, and you see it in many religions, that the heart center is often an enlarged or an illuminated space in spiritual leaders. And I think it's just basically learning how to run energy through your heart and do
Yes,
it.
and also in a lot of the ancient texts, they have the aura glow around their
Yes, yeah,
head,
that's right. Yeah.
and that's also, I think, indicative of not only the ability to see the other layers, but just that they were
Embodied as
beacons of
well.
light. Yes,
Yeah. They
exactly.
were,
If you are enjoying my podcast and are intrigued by dreams and stories of spiritual awakening, I would like to personally invite you to explore my international best-selling metaphysical trilogy, Witches of Maple Hollow. Like a mystical fairy tale, these fall-themed mysteries weave cozy supernatural fantasy into enchanting tales of magic and self-discovery. Start with Book 1, The Dream Haunters. The Book Life Prize calls it packed to the brim with surprise portals, ancient traditions, and dream worlds. Then dive into the elusive nature of reality in the Dream Mirrors. And finally, unravel ancestral riddles beyond time and space in the Dream Dimensions. Get your exclusive signed copies today at meganmary.com. Stop by the store while you're there and grab your dream journals, cozy blankets, pillows, candles, and more. And don't forget, they also are available in audiobook. Come visit me in Maple Hollow.
because that's the other aspect of embodiment, is really when we talk about this idea of surrendering, we're like dropping this linear framework that defines us as being this person, like where my skin is. When you're inviting broader consciousness to come in and kind of work through you as a channel, and everybody can be a channel, in like people who write books, like they're inviting consciousness to come and flow through that. And as you heal things within yourself, and we do a lot of planetary healing work as well, you start to get a greater integrated energy field, and that starts to have more influence through that embodied state. So an embodied master, it isn't just really what they do, it's also just what they're emanating from their frequency field through these processes of greater integration, and then taking all that energy and flowing it through the heart where it can create something in a much more balanced way than instead of flow like doing it through the mind where it's a little bit nutty still.
Yes, and you mentioned writing books, and that's exactly my experience with the three fiction books that I've written. It really, when I reread them, I'm kind of like, I wrote this because
Yeah.
it really, and people had said to me, I don't know how you're doing it so fast. Like, what are you doing? And it's really was the outpouring of all of the work that I had done and a
Mm.
result of that connecting with
Yeah.
that universal consciousness and surrendering because the surrender for me was agreeing to do the podcast. I
Right.
was called to do it and I was like, no way, this is never going to work for a million reasons.
No.
And I had no intention to do it. And when I did, that's when everything started to shift.
Right, right.
And, and
Interesting.
I-
Yes.
so, and I think of you at the Comedy Store as being the moment of your surrender where you're
Yeah,
kind of like, okay,
totally. I got to
you
stop
know,
doing this. It's something is not working here. I've tried and that's the thing. We can try everything with what our mind says to do. Even
hmm
even the stuff that I was trying to use from my spiritual understanding, like that I was developing, like law of attraction. Everything I was trying to do with the wisdom knowledge base that I had to fix or heal or change this shift the situation was not working. And that's usually an indicator when everything you're trying isn't working, that you have to surrender and you have to like drop something to allow something bigger to come in and work through
yes.
you and for you. So that, because we can still correct things with our knowledge base, but if things just aren't working, it's time to surrender.
Yes. Now, your book, The Circle of Light and the Philosopher, Another Magnificent Day, Keys for Unlocking the Soul's Potential, that was completely channeled as well. Is that right?
Yeah, that's a completely channel book. Well, there's a guy who, Jefferson Viscardi, he's asking questions of my guides, and
hmm
yeah, and it's just he was just asking questions and they were just answering.
Well, we might have to do that here.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
Is there anything that you feel the listeners need to hear today?
I mean, if I channel, that's going to be like a
hmm
whole big thing. So as
hmm
just as the representative today, I mean, sharing the heart centering has really been the super key message that I've been given the directive to pass on. There is another element to that as well, because when we're talking about, and they're telling me to tell you about this part, when we're talking about shifting the Great Awakening, we talk about in the language of moving from the 3D grid to the 5D grid.
Yeah.
And I'm sure some of your listeners understand that. But basically, the
hmm
3D framework is that ego, the 3D mind experience, which is a survival based consciousness, linear space time, psychological time, illusions of decay and entropy. With the 5D is an expanded creative construct generated from the heart, multidimensional. And one thing that they've also really shared is that it is a shift in bandwidth that we're trying to do. So they often give this idea about moving house. And right now, what's happening is we're trying to fix this old house that we've been living in, and everyone's arguing about how to fix it. But really, when you buy a new house, you kind of fix up the old house a little bit and you figure out what you want to take from that old house. But at a certain point, you actually just have to move. And that move is the equivalent of saying, okay, we've worked as hard as we can on the issues that humanity has, or what I have personally. But now, and we do a lot of work with harvesting energy from the old paradigm, giving it to the heart to create the new house, basically. We've been doing a lot of this work for a long time. But at a certain point, you just have to move. And that really is coming to that point where you're like, okay, I'm not going to worry and analyze and try to figure out how to fix the problems in the old house anymore. I'm going to really make this commitment to focus in my heart and to allow my reality to move into a new bandwidth of experience and start to receive that reality instead of trying to fix the old reality. So receptivity is also another really important part of the shift, becoming receptive as opposed to willfully trying to change things. It's actually like come into the heart, receive the new frequencies, let the heart build the new house, receive the new house, kind of like move into the new house. You don't keep going back to the 3D house. And that can be challenging for people and people who actually do really care a lot about humanity. It can be challenging to understand that the way we will shift the collective reality is to actually start collectively focusing in a new bandwidth of experience, a new focal point, rather than trying to fix the old area we've been focused in, the 3D reality.
Yes, the metaphor of the house has come up more than once, and
Mm,
especially with other intergalactic channels. And so I find that interesting, and it's almost akin to the New Earth metaphor in my mind, where we're gonna still be here, maybe, but it's going to be a shift of frequency and resonance and
yeah.
consciousness. And
And
not
it's
everyone's going to do it.
and yeah, and it's actually possible for you to be in your 5D bandwidth while the rest of some of humanity is still working out their stuff, basically. And we actually have to almost kind of accept that some of that stuff is going on. But we need to strengthen the new bandwidth by committing to the heart center and by allowing yourself to experience what the 5D grid has to offer. We're strengthening that, and that's actually going to help entrain people into the new house. It's a tough one because for people who care, again, it's like, how do I care about what's going on in the world, but also help to establish this new bandwidth? And for me personally, like, since really doing this heart centering work, I kind of do live in a very, like, I live in a drop zone. It's really beautiful here. My friends and I, we're skydivers. We jump, we jump out of planes and hold hands. I feel like they're angels, and we're kind of in this other little bubble of reality. I'm still connected to what is going on, but I'm allowed to live in this, what is my heart has been creating for me in terms of a personal life, if that makes sense. So it's kind of a little bit of a dance for people right now. If you're really drawn into some of the biggest storylines, learning how to harvest energy from the kind of gnarly stuff and give it to the heart and actually energize the heart from that density. You give the energy from the dense stuff to your heart and say, heart, take this energy and create something new with it. And that's how we feed the new house. That's how we actually make
Mm,
the new house stronger and
hmm.
bigger and ready for more people to move into that house with us.
Yeah, and it makes me think of, recently a number of people have told me very, very serious things that happened in their life, and they were quite random interactions with these people because they weren't close friends. So I was quite surprised that they were
Mm,
telling me this.
mm.
And at first I thought, oh, that's really heavy. Like I felt that it had been transferred to me. And then I thought, there's another way I can look at this. And they gave it to me to transmute it. And
Yeah,
so now I can take this and I can give them back what they know I can give them that I didn't even realize I could. And
right.
so then I actually did that and I actually worked on transmuting that energy for them because I think that on a subconscious level, the reason that they told me in this totally strange situation, I was like, why are they telling me this very personal
Yeah,
story? Was because they knew that I had the ability to do
the
that, even though
ability to.
I didn't know at the time. So
Where,
yeah.
well, the circle would actually say they are you, and they are embodiments of maybe not even unconscious energy for you from this lifetime. But if we think about ourselves, this idea of the all consciousness, that we're all connected by the fabric of consciousness, human consciousness. And if we want to gain greater power by working from that concept of all consciousness, where we can actually help to shift some of the bigger storylines, This is a lot of the work that we do is we say, look, that person is me on some level, and their pain is my pain. And
Mm-hmm.
so through the heart center, we can transmute a lot of collective pain, but that's a lot of energy. It's a big volume of energy. And that big volume of energy now becomes available for me to manifest for myself personally, but also for the collective and to help build the new house. So
Mm-hmm.
that starts to happen when it's time for you to really start to break down the idea of the singular egoic identity and move into yourself as a God consciousness creator, basically. And through the heart,
Mm-hmm.
we access why it's so powerful, get right down the rabbit hole, is through the heart. We're actually accessing this thing called the master consciousness, which is essentially like the intelligence behind all creation. It's kind of like the brain of God, basically. Just to make that idea simple, that everything has intelligence behind it. There is a brain behind everything from a tree to a cell phone. And through the heart, we're accessing that greater intelligence that's created everything. And so it knows how to uncreate everything and recreate anew. And our job is to basically go look at life and be like, well, that's a bunch of yucky, dense stuff. Let's take the energy from the war and the suffering and the pain and the disease, give that to the heart to purify, to create something new with. And that's actually how we transcend from the pain, the heaviness, the density, and the suffering. We're like big recycling machines, basically, right now.
Mm-hmm. And it's our calling as guides and
Yeah.
healers and all of that
Yeah.
to do that.
Yes.
So, in closing, my last question is, how does laughter tie into this, and how can that be an ally in awakening?
Oh, I love that. I think it's so funny because years ago I actually, do you know who Abraham Hicks is? Not everybody does.
Yes.
Yes,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yes.
So, but years ago before I had my event, I actually, this is when I was a starving comedian and I was going through all this difficult stuff. And I actually got called up from the audience to speak with Abraham. And the
Hmm.
recording of it actually popped up somewhere recently.
Hmm.
And I was sort of saying, and I did ask, I was like, in comedy, we're often dealing with like heavy stuff and is speaking about it, making jokes about it, perpetuating it, because I didn't fully understand how energy actually worked at that time. And they kind of gave this, and I'll say a couple of things about this. I think artists and creative people have always had this power to take denser stuff and through the creative process, transmute it into a higher aspect of something,
Hmm.
into art,
Yes.
into music. And
Music.
it
Yeah.
kind of holds the codes of a healing through that in its own way. And when people listen, like even when people listen to sad music, music can hold that container for their own unconscious sadness. And it's a way for them to process and reconnect with that part of themselves and come into union with it. And I think laughter, a lot of the times when we laugh at ourselves, we've actually developed another really important part of this journey, which is to be able to witness ourselves. So, not to be so engaged in the psychology of the little me, like so caught up in like, the pettiness of the mind and the sort of taking
It's
things
true.
very seriously. When people write comedy or when we laugh about stuff, we've moved into a position of witness a lot of the times. And then we can start to laugh at it. And that already is elevating some of that. Now, of course, a lot of people can use laughter as a defense mechanism, and it is a coping mechanism to a certain degree until you're maybe actually ready to really get stuck into the pain that might be behind those stories. But it certainly is a transmuting, it is a transmutation of something that probably was very painful at some point or had pain in it.
I never thought about that witnessing aspect to comedy. That's very powerful. And it's so
Mm,
true because it does allow you to get out of your own brain and see yourself
yeah,
and and the making light of or making a comedic take on the situation
yeah.
is actually breaking out of the victimization
And the total
perception.
identification, yeah,
Yeah,
with the
that's
story.
so
Yeah.
interesting. Yeah,
Yeah. That
very
actually just
interesting.
came to me literally as you asked that question, but I think
That's so interesting.
I've talked a lot about art and creativity before being this kind of processing. But yeah, I actually did see the witnessing thing just dropped in right
Mm-hmm.
for me to share. Yeah.
Genius. Well, I've really enjoyed talking with you today. There were so many things that we covered. If people want to learn more about your circle of light and the work that you do and the healing techniques that you have to offer, where can they find you?
Yes, we are at my website is circleevolution.com, circle like the shape and evolution like evolution of consciousness. That's the main portal for all my work. If you are interested in hearing, I have a lot of free recordings on there if you want to actually hear my guides channeling. And also, we now have a podcast called Spread Your Third Eye where I channel a lot on that, and we have guests come on and ask questions from different points of view. That's one of the ways that we're sharing a lot of the information that's come through over the last 20 years, different nuggets in different realms. So that's really awesome. And I'd love to give a little plug to an event that I'm doing later this year. I don't do a lot of live in-person events, but I'm going to be at an event called the Channel Panel in West Virginia with our and Wendy Kennedy. There's a whole bunch of channels and different people who are on the show. Interview with Extra Dimensionals, which I was on. Reuben Langdon, who creates that show. That's going to be. I know a lot of people are feeling spiritual isolation on this journey, so that's going to be a really awesome event for people to get together, and we're all going to kind of really get down the rabbit hole together.
Amazing.
But
Yes.
circle evolution is where you can basically find all the gateways to all of those things.
Great. Well, I will put the links in the show notes so everyone can check it out.
That would be
And
great. Thank you so
thank you so
much.
much for being here today, Georgia, and sharing your story. I really
Thank
appreciate
you,
it.
Megan. I really appreciate you having me on.
Thank you. Thank you for listening. Did you enjoy this episode? Be sure to subscribe to make sure you never miss an episode. Head over to my YouTube channel and hit that subscribe button as well to be part of my growing community. Are you ready to take the next step in your spiritual journey? Don't miss out on the new Dream Empowerment programs. Unique opportunities for you to unlock your inner wisdom, discover your authenticity, align with your higher self, and bring abundance into your life. If you'd like your dream or awakening story featured on my show, submit it today. Your dreams have the power to inspire and enlighten other women on their journey. Visit meganmary.com to find out more.